Hi again, everyone. Katie here from Meet the Maskies, and I just wanted to take a minute because I have been updating you all on my Tarlov cyst journey, and I wanted to try to keep up with that. So even when there's kind of not anything going on right now, my goal is to keep you informed and just talk about this and share my experience and everything that I'm going through with Tarlov cyst disease and how I'm treating it and trying to kind of work through it. And the last video I shared was about a month ago, so I wanted to kind of pop in, even though I don't have too much to update you on. But it is now February, and I will say I did receive a call from Dr. Fangenbaum's office at the beginning of January, and they wanted to schedule my surgery for February 1st, which normally I would say, yes, let's get this done and over with so I can get to healing and move on with my life. But the job I do is kind of like I'm part of a team, but I'm the one person in my department in my region, and it's not like there's really somebody that is in my area that could, take over for me. So I had to talk to them about that and asked if we could hold off until March, because then that at least gets me through the busiest part of my season. And she said, the nurse that I talked to said, yes, obviously the longer I wait, my nerves are compressed. My nerves are compressing each other because of the fluid buildup in them that's ballooning them, and they're eating into my bone. And so obviously the longer that you wait to correct that, the potential for permanent damage can be done. But she said, we're talking a couple of weeks, not a problem. So they are going to be calling me when they open up their March books. I'm hoping that by maybe the end of this week even, or early next week, that I will get a phone call and have a date and be able to move forward with planning surgery and going to Texas and all of that, because I don't live in Texas, I live in the Midwest. So it is definitely a plane ride away, and there's a lot that is involved with that. But I did want to take a minute to just kind of talk about, I don't think I discussed this in any of my other videos, about, when you get this diagnosis, what does that mean? I'm part of the Tarlov Cyst Facebook group. I know I've talked about that before, and there's a lot of people when they pop on that group for the first time, and this was totally me several months ago. This was me. I got the diagnosis. I saw the words Tarlov cyst in my MRI reading, and I freaked out. And of course, like everybody else, you Google it, or you start looking on Facebook, or you start, you just try to do as much research as you can, especially if you have a local doctor that you're working with that doesn't know anything about these or never heard of them, or what they've heard is that, oh, they're not a problem. That's not uncommon at all. So I started Googling, and I found the Facebook group that I now am, I don't want to say I'm experienced, but I'm not in that position like many people that when they first get that diagnosis. I'm past that point now, and I've had several months. I'm kind of a little bit a step ahead at least, and I watch people, get the diagnosis, they join the group, they find the group, they join it, and they pop on and say how scared they are, and how their anxiety is totally changed, and now they're worried about their future. And those were all things that I felt 100%, especially when I ended up in a very debilitating flare-up that I haven't had since, but it put me down for about a week where I was like hardly even getting out of bed. So my anxiety, it's there. I hear you, and I wanted to take a minute and kind of focus on that in this video. If you're a caregiver of somebody that has this diagnosis, you're a spouse, you're a child, you're a friend, you're some sort of family member, whatever the case is, know that this is scary for us, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep it together. And for me, now that it's been several months, it's something that I'm obviously thinking about almost 24/7, it feels like. And I've had to change my lifestyle and do so much because of this. And I didn't really talk about that in my other videos. So just to kind of backtrack, I actually competed in Mrs. Michigan and Mrs. Michigan America, and I won back in the spring. I was crowned Mrs. Michigan America, and I started planning for my journey to Mrs. America. For me, it is the most prestigious Mrs. pageant that's out there. And I love being a title holder. I do a lot of advocacy work. I really, even before this disease, I talk about invisible illnesses and invisible disabilities and all of that, because I've dealt with chronic pain. I had some really major lung surgery, and that lung surgery, I mean, they had to cut me open and do a lot in my chest wall. And so I deal with a lot of chronic pain. I've dealt with chronic pain. I always kind of jokingly say I have a higher tolerance of pain now because of that. I really advocate for invisible illnesses, because if you look at me, you probably don't see that, or you don't think that I'm dealing with that. And that was part of my, what we call our platform. As a title holder, I really try to use that title to amplify those voices and other people that are struggling with some sort of invisible, they've got pain, or they've got mental health disorders, or whatever the case may be, things that you're dealing and struggling with internally, that people, that they look at you on the outside and they don't see that. They don't see that anything is wrong. And it's really hard sometimes for people to understand and believe that, and to really hear that. And it's hard, right? It's hard to believe things that you can't see sometimes. So I definitely think it's something that affects all of us. And for me, I won Mrs. Michigan. I was so excited, getting ready to prepare for Mrs. America against every single state. And it was in Las Vegas. And then boom, that's when I got hit with this diagnosis. So in May, the end of May, I was participating in a Memorial Day parade as Mrs. Michigan, sitting up on the back of a little convertible car. That weekend after that is when I got hit with my debilitating flare-up. I don't know if they're connected, but that was when I got the debilitating flare-up, and it really pushed me to continue to pursue this, what's going on. And then I got the diagnosis after my MRI, and I thought, okay, now what? What should I do? So at that point, I really cut a lot of my activities because I didn't want to get back into that flare-up. I did not want to be debilitated again, where I couldn't get out of bed. I'm so active. I was working out all the time, and I, just doing so many things. And my husband and I, that's another thing. We love antiquing road trips. We're big on antiques. We would get in the car on a 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning and hit the road and go for hours. And we can't do that anymore. We had to stop doing that as I learned more about this diagnosis, and as I found what things were triggering my pain, and understanding more where it was coming from. Once I finally understood where the pain was coming from, because my symptoms are in my pelvis, they're in my hip, they're in my back, they're in my sciatica, they're down the back of my leg, all of that. I mean, I didn't know where it was coming from. If you watch my other videos, I talk about that, all the different doctors and things that I was seeing for this, because I just didn't know where the origin of the pain and the problem was. I learned where it was coming from. And so I was able to kind of work through correcting that and figuring out what I needed for my body. So as time progressed and I was experiencing more problems and pains, I was trying to live my normal life. I was trying to prepare for Mrs. America with this new diagnosis. And then it really hit me, I would say in September. I was emceeing a pageant, and I had to stand at the podium for hours at the MC table. Luckily, they were so accommodating. I had a stool so I could sit, I could stand, whatnot, and that was nice. But at the end of that, I remember, I'll never forget, walking off stage and going into the dressing room. And I was by myself because there was so much hustle and bustle going on, and I just started sobbing because I knew at that point that there was no way I was going to be able to go through the grueling week of Mrs. America, which, don't get me wrong, it's it seems like amazing experience, and I have had so many friends, and even one of my best friends, I'll talk about that in a second here. Anyways, so but it's a very busy schedule. There's a lot of rehearsals that you're doing. There's a lot of events and just different things that you have to participate in, and it's go, go, go all the time. And at that moment, after I, had just spent just a couple of hours in a gown, in heels, I had the ability to sit and stand and to change my position, and all of that was accommodating. But after that, I knew that I couldn't do it. And I had to make the god-awful decision to give up my title. And I couldn't fully represent the state. I couldn't represent myself the way that I wanted to be able to give 110% at Mrs. America. And there was no way that I could do that. And I just felt like I was going to go and disappoint people and disappoint myself. And I couldn't do it. And so I had some very serious conversations with my husband. I had some long conversations with my friends, my family, the director, and ultimately we made that decision that I needed to step back. So I was Mrs. Michigan for 6 months, and then interestingly, the first runner-up to Mrs. Michigan was actually one of my best friends. We competed together. We did this journey together. They actually gave a title to the first runner-up at Mrs. Michigan. So I was Mrs. Michigan America, and Jackie, one of my best friends, ended up being crowned Mrs. Michigan American because she won that first runner-up spot. So when I gave up my title, I gave it to her. And that was partly, I think, what made it a little easier, because I knew an amazing person was getting that, and I could be a part of the journey still, and I could watch her and really kind of be a part of it all through her. So that is something that I had to give up. And I know for some of you, you're like, ugh, okay, whatever. But for me, that was huge. I mean, that was a big thing. Different people have to give up different things, and it's all in scale and perspective of your own life. So maybe you have to give up work. Maybe you have to give up, doing activities with your family, or, other things that I've had to give up outside of pageantry right now and our hobbies of antiquing. I just can't do a lot of the events and things that I would go to and volunteer, and you would see me running around like a crazy person. I can't do that anymore. I have to listen to my body. Even right now, I can feel it all in my side and in my hip, and the burning sensation and all of that. But I really just need to take this time, and I need to be okay with that, and I am. And if you're a caregiver listening or a friend, the best advice I can give you is just to let that person take the time that he or she needs to heal, so she can understand her body and go through this. But don't forget about them either. That's the thing. I know that I can't do all of the things that my friends and family and all of that are doing, but I'm still the same person that I was. There are new challenges for me, physically and mentally, but we still love to hear about your life and what you've got going on. Don't feel like when you talk to us that you always, and I'm not speaking for everybody. Obviously, everybody's different. I'm just going to kind of give you from my perspective, advice. But, when you talk to us, don't be afraid to tell us the good, exciting things that you got going on, just because we can't, necessarily maybe physically be there to celebrate with you. We are still here to celebrate those great things, and we want to hear the positive. The positive keeps us going. But then, also when we need that moment to just cry or share what we're experiencing, being a listening ear goes so far. It does. It really does. And just being that person to say, I understand. It's okay. You can tell me how you're feeling, and I'm not going to judge you. That's the thing that I feel like sometimes we need to hear the most, is that we're not being judged, because we constantly feel like we are. We feel like people just are sick of hearing it, or they don't believe us. And when you live with this every single day, you can't run and hide from it. You can't stop thinking about it, or it's constantly on our mind. And so just having that listening ear is always helpful. But that's just what I wanted to kind of take this moment to talk about. I know it was really long-winded, and I'm sorry, but it's just there's so much anxiety that goes with this diagnosis, and there's so much that you're scared and you don't know, and the unexpected. I mean, even the what ifs of surgery. I'm scared to death of having this surgery, but I think about the long road ahead. I mean, I'm 40, and I just think about like all of the life that I have to live still, and I'm worried about the progression of this disease, and that scares me more. Anything I can do now while it's still early on and my symptoms are, for the most part, I would say mild in the grand scheme of things, to the average person that might not be considered, but to other people living with this disease, I've seen and heard the stories about how very different some of these symptoms can be. So while I'm still early on in the process, I want to get this taken care of, because I'm hoping that my recovery can be much smoother as well too. So I just wanted to take a moment to give you that update. I'm waiting for the call, and as soon as I get that, I'll pop on and do another update, because I know like right now it's not real. And so once I have that call and I start planning, I'll kind of walk through that journey of what my planning looks like for the travel to Texas and the surgery and all of that. But thank you so much for following my journey. If there's anything you want me to, talk about, I'm kind of thinking about starting a little dedicated channel to all things, chronic illness, and I want to do some interviews with other people. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll think about it. If that's something that you would be interested, please pop that in the comments and let me know. Or if you have questions or things that specifically you want me to address, I try to read all of your comments. You have been so supportive. I'm trying to answer as much as I can, and I know many of you are in the same boat that I am. So know that I'm here, and I'm going to try to do my best to shed a little light on all of that we're going through. So thanks for tuning in and watching, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye.